Most beginner fish are honestly kind of boring. They swim around a little, maybe sit in one corner, and that's about it. But these little guys are completely different. These are Corydoras catfish, and they might be one of the most entertaining fish that you can keep in an aquarium. They're peaceful, social, constantly active, and surprisingly full of personality. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about why Corydoras might actually be the perfect aquarium fish. I'll also show you how to care for them properly, and a few mistakes people make that you should avoid. Corydoras catfish are small, freshwater catfish that come from rivers and streams across South America. You can find them in places like Brazil, Peru, Colombia, and Argentina, usually living in shallow waters with sandy or muddy bottoms. They belong to a group of fish often called armored catfish. Instead of having scales like most fish, Corydoras have rows of small bony plates among their bodies that help protect them from predators. They also have something else that makes them really unique. Tiny, whisker-like structures around their mouths called barbels. These barbels are extremely sensitive and help Corydoras search through the substrate for food. If you watch them closely in an aquarium, you'll often see them digging through the sand, sifting it around, and searching for tiny bits of food. It's honestly kind of adorable. And if you keep a group of them together, it can look like a tiny team of underwater vacuum cleaners working their way across the bottom of your tank. One of the biggest reasons Corydoras are so popular is because they're incredibly beginner-friendly. First of all, they're extremely peaceful. Corydoras almost never bother other fish, which makes them perfect for community aquariums. They do really well with species like tetras, rasboras, guppies, and many other small peaceful fish. Most of the time they simply mind their own business and explore the bottom of the tank. Second, they're fairly hardy fish. As long as your aquarium is properly cycled and you maintain decent water quality, Corydoras tend to adapt very well. They're not nearly as fragile as some other small aquarium fish. But the biggest reason that people will fall in love with Corydoras is their personality. Unlike some fish that just sit around all day, Corydoras are constantly moving. They explore the tank, search for food, interact with each other, and occasionally do something Corydoras keepers like to call zoomies. It's when they suddenly dart across the tank at full speed for absolutely no reason. And if you've ever kept Corydoras before, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And honestly, it never stops being funny. One of the most important things to understand about Cory catfish is that they're very social. In the wild, they live in large groups called shoals, and these groups help protect them from predators and make them feel safer. Because of this, Corydoras should never be kept alone in an aquarium. A good rule of thumb is to keep at least 5 or 6 together, but if you have the space, the more the better. When they're kept in proper groups, their behaviour completely changes. They become more confident, more active, and much more interesting to watch. You'll see them exploring together, resting near each other, and sometimes swimming up and down the tank as a group. But when they're kept alone or in very small numbers, they often become shy and hide away more often. So if you're planning to keep Corydoras, always plan to keep them in a group. They're much happier that way. Setting up an aquarium for Corydoras is pretty simple, but there are a few things that you should keep in mind. First is the substrate. Since Corys spend most of their time on the bottom of the tank, the type of substrate you choose matters quite a bit. A soft sand substrate is usually the best option. Corys love digging through sand and sifting it through their barbels while searching for food. Gravel can work too, but if it's sharp or rough, it can sometimes damage their barbels over time. Because of that, sand is usually the safest and most natural choice. The next important thing is plants and hiding places. In the wild, Corys often live in areas with lots of plants, roots, and debris. Adding live plants, driftwood, and decorations helps them feel more comfortable and behave much more naturally. It also makes your aquarium look much more interesting and natural. Finally, water quality is important. Like most aquarium fish, Corys do best in clean and stable water. Regular water changes and a properly cycled tank will keep them healthy for years. Another reason that Corydoras are so easy to care for is that they are not picky eaters. They'll happily eat a vast variety of foods. Most people will feed them sinking pellets or wafers designed specifically for bottom-feeding fish. These make sure the Corys actually get food instead of relying on leftovers from other fish. Because despite what some people think, Corys are not just clean-up fish. They still need their own proper diet to stay healthy. You can also feed them frozen foods like bloodworms, brine shrimp, or daphnia. When they get these kinds of treats, you'll often see the whole group rush over to investigate. One behaviour that surprises a lot of new koi owners is something called air gulping. Every once in a while, a koi will suddenly swim up to the surface, take a quick gulp of air, and then swim back down to the bottom. At first, this can look like something is wrong, but it's actually completely normal. Kois have the ability to absorb oxygen from the air through their digestive system. This adaptation helps them survive in the wild where oxygen levels in the water can sometimes drop. So if you see your Corydoras doing this occasionally, there is usually nothing to worry about. They're just doing what kois do. One of the coolest things about kois is just how many different species there are. There are actually over 150 known species, and many of them are commonly kept in aquariums. Some of the most popular ones include bronze Corydoras like you see here, panda Corydoras, peppered Corydoras, and stir-bite Corydoras. Each species has its own colours and patterns, but they all share the same playful personality and peaceful nature. And once you start keeping one of them, it's very easy to end up wanting all of them. So are kois the perfect aquarium fish? Well, no, because no fish is truly perfect, but kois would come pretty close. They're peaceful, beginner-friendly, social, and incredibly entertaining to watch. They bring constant movement and life to the bottom of an aquarium, and once you start keeping them, it's honestly pretty hard to not fall in love with them. Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe so I'll see you in the next video.